The sound of a baccarat crystal glass shattering against a marble floor is distinct. It's sharp, expensive, and final. In the VIP section of L'Obsidian, that sound usually means someone just lost their job or their career. When Julian Thorne, the venture capitalist known on Wall Street as the Silencer, stopped eating, the entire restaurant didn't just go quiet, it stopped breathing. He didn't yell. He didn't flip tables. He just looked at you with eyes like dead winter. Everyone in New York feared him. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, a girl with frayed sneakers and nothing to lose named Elena didn't just clean up the glass. She looked him in the eye and did the one thing nobody expected. She told him, no. And that was the moment everything changed. If you worked in the service industry in Manhattan, you knew the hierarchy of fear. At the bottom were the tourists who tipped poorly. In the middle were the socialites who sent their salads back 3 times. But at the very top, residing in a league of his own, was Julian Thorne. Thorne was the CEO of Thorne Vance Capital. At 34, he was the youngest man to ever hostile take over a Fortune 500 company and strip it for parts within a week. He wasn't a celebrity billionaire who went to the Met Gala. He was the shadow figure who funded the people who went to the Met Gala. He was precise, joyless, and notoriously cruel to service staff. L'Obsidian was his canteen. It was a dimly lit, slate-grey fortress of gastronomy on West 57th Street, where a risotto cost more than a car payment. Elena Russo adjusted her apron in the back alley, taking a final drag of a cigarette before stomping it out. The rain was coming down hard, soaking the shoulders of her cheap polyester uniform. She was 26, tired, and her bank account was currently overdrawn by $42. She had been working at L'Obsidian for exactly 3 days. "He's here," the floor manager, a sweating Frenchman named Jean-Luc, whispered frantically into his headset as Eleanor walked into the kitchen. "Table 1. Nobody make eye contact unless summoned. Marcus, you have the wine service. Do not shake. For the love of God, do not shake." Elena washed her hands, glancing at Marcus. Marcus was a sweet kid, maybe 21, trying to pay for NYU tuition. He looked like he was about to vomit. "Just breathe, Marcus," Elena whispered, grabbing a tray of silverware. "He's just a guy in a suit." "He's not a guy," Marcus stammered, his hands trembling as he cradled a bottle of 2009 Chateau Margaux like it was a holy relic. Last month, he had a waiter fired and blacklisted from every Union Square Hospitality Group restaurant because the water glass had a smudge. "He ruins lives, Elena." Elena didn't have time to argue. She had bills to pay. She picked up her station assignments and headed out to the floor. The atmosphere in the dining room was oppressive. It was beautiful, yes. Velvet banquettes, gold leaf ceilings, a view of the city skyline, but the tension was thick. At table 1 sat Julian Thorne. He was undeniably handsome in a terrifying, predatory way. He wore a charcoal Brioni suit that fit him like armor. His dark hair was swept back, and his eyes were focused on the tablet propped up against a bread basket. He wasn't eating. He was working. He was always working. Elena watched from her station as Marcus approached table 1. The poor kid was vibrating. "Mr. Thorne," Marcus said, his voice cracking. You're Margot, sir." Julian didn't look up. He simply extended a hand, palm up, waiting for the glass. Marcus began to pour. It happened in slow motion. A sudden burst of thunder rattled the large window panes, and Marcus flinched. It was a tiny movement, a microscopic twitch of the wrist. A single crimson drop of wine missed the glass. It didn't hit Julian. It didn't hit his suit. It landed on the pristine white tablecloth, blooming like a tiny gunshot wound, about 6 inches from Julian's hand. Marcus froze. He stopped pouring. He looked at the spot. then at Julian. Julian Thorne slowly turned his head. He looked at the red spot. Then he looked at the bottle. Finally, he looked up at Marcus. "Get out," Julian said. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low baritone, smooth and cold. "Sir, I can change the cloth immediately. I am so sorry. The thunder—" Marcus began to hyperventilate. "I don't want the cloth changed," Julian said, closing his tablet. "I want you out of my sight, and I want the manager to explain to me why he hires incompetents who flinch at weather." "Please, Mr. Thorne," Marcus whispered, tears actually forming in his eyes. "I need this job." "Then you should have been better at it." Julian picked up his napkin and dropped it over the wine spot, dismissing him. "Leave. Now. Or I call the owner." The dining room was silent. Other tables looked away, terrified of drawing fire. Jean-Luc, the manager, was rushing over from the host stand, his face pale, ready to drag Marcus away and beg for forgiveness. But someone else got there first. Elena didn't think. She just moved. She stepped between the trembling Marcus and the seated billionaire. "Marcus, go check on table 4, Elena said calmly, taking the wine bottle from his shaking hands. "What?" Marcus blinked. "Go," she said firmly. Marcus fled. Elena turned to Julian Thorne. She didn't cower. She didn't apologize. She placed the wine bottle on the side table with a solid thud. Julian looked up. For the first time all night, he looked, really looked, at a human being. His eyes narrowed. "I didn't order a change of staff," Julian said. "I ordered him fired." "He's not fired," Elena said. Her voice was steady, though her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "He's 21 years old and it's raining. The atmospheric pressure dropped." "It happens." Julian stared at her. It was a look that usually withered CEOs during mergers. "Excuse me?" "The wine didn't touch you, Mr. Thorne," Elena continued, picking up the silver crumb scraper. "It didn't touch your suit. It didn't touch your phone. It touched a piece of cotton that we send to the laundry service every night." She deftly whisked the table, her movements sharp and professional. "You are disturbing my dinner," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave, danger radiating off him. "You weren't eating," Elena countered. She gestured to his untouched appetizer. "You were reading a spreadsheet about—" She glanced at his tablet screen before he could snap it shut, shorting a pharmaceutical stock, which frankly seems more likely to ruin someone's day than a drop of wine. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. Jean-Luc had stopped 10 feet away, his mouth open in horror. A couple at the next table had stopped chewing. Julian Thorne slowly stood up. He was tall, well over 6 feet, towering over Elena. "What is your name?" he asked. "Elena," she said, lifting her chin. "Elena Russo." "Well, Elena Russo," Julian said, buttoning his jacket. "You have a very big mouth for someone who just cost this establishment my business." He threw a black American Express Centurion card onto the table. "Charge for the wine. I'm leaving." "No," Elena said. Julian paused. "No? You didn't drink the wine. I'm not charging you for it. We don't charge for mistakes, and we don't charge for intimidation." She picked up the black card and held it out to him. "Have a good night, Mr. Thorne. Try to stay dry." Julian looked at the card in her hand. Then he looked at her face. He saw dark circles under her eyes, a cheap clip holding back her hair, and a defiance he hadn't seen since, well, ever. He snatched the card from her hand. His fingers brushed hers. His were cold, hers were warm. "You're making a mistake," he said softly. "I make them all the time," Elena replied, "but I clean them up." Julian turned on his heel and stormed out of the restaurant, his coat flapping behind him like a cape. The moment the heavy glass doors slammed shut, Jean-Luc was on her. "You are insane," Jean-Luc hissed, grabbing her arm. "Do you know how much money he spends here? You are finished, Elena. Pack your things. Get out." Elena pulled her arm away. She looked at the empty table. She knew she was fired. She knew she was broke. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel small. "Fine," she said. "I quit." She walked into the kitchen, untied her apron, and threw it in the bin. She walked out the back door into the pouring rain, unaware that a black Maybach was parked just down the street, and inside it, Julian Thorne was watching her through the tinted glass, dialing a number on his phone. "Get me everything on her," Julian said to the person on the other end. "Elena Russo, by morning." The next morning, Elena woke up to the sound of drilling. Her apartment in Queens was a closet with a window, situated directly above a 24-hour laundromat that was currently undergoing loud renovations. She stared at the ceiling cracks. Unemployed again. She checked her bank balance on her phone. $14.12. Rent was due in 4 days. She groaned, rolling out of bed. She made instant coffee and sat at her wobbly table, opening her laptop to search for catering gigs on Craigslist. Her phone rang. It was a blocked number. "Hello," she answered, expecting a debt collector. "Ms. Russo." A woman's voice, crisp and British. "This is Alana Graves, executive assistant to Julian Thorne." Eleanor nearly dropped her mug. "If he wants to sue me for emotional distress, tell him to get in line behind my landlord." "Mr. Thorne does not wish to sue you," the woman said, sounding bored. "He wishes to offer you a job." Elena laughed, a dry, harsh sound. "Right. As what? His punching bag? I think I filled my quota last night." "The salary is $120,000 a year, full benefits, and a signing bonus," the woman continued, ignoring Elena's sarcasm. "Plus a confidentiality agreement." Elena stopped laughing. $120,000. That was life-changing money. That was saving her dad's house money. "What's the catch?" Elena asked suspiciously. "Does he want to hunt me for sport on a private island? He needs a personal logistics manager, someone who handles the things he cannot. Please come to Thorne Tower at 2:00 p.m. Do not be late. The security desk has your name." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone. It was a trap. It had to be. But $120K. She looked around her apartment. The radiator clanked mournfully. She put on her only blazer, a thrifted navy blue jacket, and ironed her best white shirt. Thorne Tower was a glass needle piercing the sky in Tribeca. The lobby smelled like white tea and money. When Eleanor gave her name, the security guard didn't check a list. He just nodded and pressed a button that opened a private elevator. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office that was larger than her entire apartment building. It was stark, minimalist, and terrifyingly high up. Julian Thorne was standing by the window, looking out at the Hudson River. He didn't turn around when she entered. "You're wearing polyester," he said. "And you're wearing judgment," Eleanor shot back, clutching her bag. "Did you bring me here to critique my wardrobe, or is there an actual job?" Julian turned. In the daylight, he looked even more intense. He walked over to his massive glass desk and sat down, gesturing for her to sit. She didn't. "Sit down, Miss Russo." "I prefer to stand until I know I'm not being arrested." Julian smirked. It was a faint, fleeting thing. "Smart. I looked into you, Elena. High school valedictorian, nursing school dropout. Why did you drop out?" "Financial hardship," Elena said stiffly. "My father got sick. I had to work." "Your father, formerly owned Russo Construction, went under in 2019 after a larger conglomerate underbid him on the Midtown Tunnel project." Julian tapped a file on his desk. "A conglomerate owned by one of my subsidiaries." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. You put my dad out of business? Indirectly. It's capitalism, Elena. The strong eat the weak. I'm leaving, Elena said, turning toward the elevator. She felt sick. This man was the reason her father sat in a chair all day, staring at the wall, depressed and broken. I'm offering you a job that pays double your debt in 6 months. Julian's voice cut through the air. You can walk out on your moral high ground and let your father lose his house, or you can work for the devil and pay for his care. Which is it? Elena stopped. Her hand hovered over the elevator button. She hated him. She hated everything he stood for. But she remembered her dad's cough. She remembered the foreclosure notices piling up on the kitchen counter in Queens. She turned back slowly. What is the job? I am difficult, Julian admitted, leaning back. I go through assistants every 3 months. They cry, they break, they try to please me. I don't want someone who tries to please me. I want someone who tells me the truth. You stood up to me last night. You have a spine. I need a spine. You want me to be your babysitter, Elena summarized. I want you to manage my life, my schedule, my travel, my optics. The board of directors thinks I'm losing touch with reality. They think I'm a liability because I don't know the price of milk. You're going to help me seem human. That's going to be a heavy lift, Elena muttered. Your contract is on the tablet. Read it. Sign it. You start now. Elena walked to the desk. She looked at the number on the screen. It was real. She looked at Julian. He was watching her with that same predatory gaze. One condition, Elena said. I don't negotiate with staff. I'm not staff yet. One condition. You apologize to Marcus. Julian blinked. The waiter. The human being you humiliated. You send him a written apology and a tip equivalent to a week's wages. Julian stared at her for a long, agonizing minute. The air conditioning hummed. Fine, he said tightly. Done. Elena picked up the stylus and signed the digital document. Then I guess I work for you, Mr. Thorne. Don't get comfortable, Julian said, standing up. We have a gala tonight. The Heart of New York Charity Ball. You're coming with me. As what? I don't have a dress. You're coming to manage the donors. And don't worry about the dress. He pressed a button on his intercom. Alana, send the styling team in. As a team of 3 women swarmed into the office with garment bags and tape measures, Elena caught Julian watching her again. He looked amused. She had just sold her soul to the devil of Wall Street, but she had $120,000 reasons to do it. Little did she know, the charity ball wasn't just a party. It was a hunting ground, and Julian was the target. The dress was emerald green silk, backless, and cost more than Elena's entire college tuition. It fit her like a second skin, but as she stepped out of the limousine in front of the Pierre Hotel, Elena felt like an imposter. Flashbulbs popped like strobes, blinding her. The paparazzi were screaming Julian's name. Thorne, Thorne! Is it true the merger with Omni is failing? Julian, who's the girl? Look this way. Julian didn't blink. He moved through the chaos like a shark cutting through water. He offered Eleanor his arm, not out of chivalry, but out of necessity. Don't smile, he murmured, his lips barely moving. Don't frown. Just look bored. If you look bored, they think you belong. I don't belong, Elena whispered back, gripping his bicep. The muscle underneath the expensive suit was rock hard with tension. Tonight you do. Remember your briefing. Silas Vance is here. He's the minority shareholder, trying to oust me as CEO. He will try to talk to you. Do not let him. They entered the ballroom. It was a sea of diamonds, tuxedos, and fake laughter. The air smelled of expensive perfume and desperation. Elena recognized faces from magazines, senators, tech moguls, actresses. Julian was immediately besieged. Men in suits surrounded him, hungry for a piece of his attention. Elena stood by his side, playing the part of the dutiful assistant, handing him water, checking the time, deflecting minor players. Then, the waters parted. A man approached. He was older than Julian, with silver hair, a tan that looked painted on, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Julian," the man boomed, and the mysterious new associate. "Silas," Julian said. The temperature between them dropped 10 degrees. "This is Elena Russo, my head of logistics." Silas Vance looked Elena up and down. It wasn't a sexual look, it was an appraisal. He was checking for weak spots. "Charmed," Silas said, taking her hand. His grip was moist. "Russo, I don't know the family. New money." "No money," Elena said sweetly, pulling her hand away. "Just talent." Silas laughed, a sharp bark. Feisty. Julian always liked them broken, so this is a change. "Tell me, Elena, how is he handling the stress? Rumor has it, the board is voting next week on his mental fitness to lead." Elena felt Julian stiffen beside her. This was the attack. Silas was trying to bait him into an outburst in public. "Mr. Thorne doesn't have stress," Elena lied smoothly, stepping slightly in front of Julian. "He has strategy. And frankly, Mr. Vance, looking at the Q3 reports I filed this morning, I'd be more worried about your own liquidity issues than Julian's mental health. Didn't your real estate division just post a 40% loss?" It was a bluff. Elena had skimmed a headline on Bloomberg in the lobby, but she delivered it with the confidence of an insider. Silas's smile faltered. The people around them went quiet. Well, the market is volatile," Silas stammered. "Indeed," Elena said, taking 2 flutes of champagne from a passing waiter. She handed one to Julian and kept one. "Shall we toast to volatility? It tends to clear out the dead wood." Julian took the glass. His eyes met hers. For a split second, there was a gleam of genuine respect. "To dead wood," Julian said, clinking his glass against Silas's before turning his back on the man. They walked away, leaving Silas fuming. Once they were out of earshot near the balcony doors, Julian let out a long breath. "You read the Q3 reports?" he asked. "I read the news while I was waiting for my hair to be done," she admitted. "Did I overstep?" "You gutted him," Julian said. "It was efficient." But something was wrong. Julian's hand was trembling. The champagne in his glass was rippling. He set the glass down on a high-top table abruptly. "I need air," he choked out. Before she could answer, he pushed through the balcony doors. Elena followed him. The balcony was empty, overlooking Central Park. The November air was biting. Julian was gripping the stone railing, his knuckles white. He was gasping for air, his head bowed. "Julian?" Elena approached slowly. "Get away," he rasped. "Go back inside." "You're having a panic attack," Elena said. She knew the signs. She'd seen her father have them when the bills piled up. "I am not having." He couldn't finish the sentence. His knees buckled. Elena caught him. He was heavy, dead weight against her. But she managed to guide him to a stone bench. He was hyperventilating, clawing at his tie. "Julian, look at me," she commanded. She grabbed his hands, forcing him to stop clawing at his neck. His hands were freezing. "I can't breathe," he wheezed. "Heart attack." "It's not a heart attack. You're overwhelmed. Listen to my voice. 5 things you can see. Tell me." Tell me," she ordered, her voice sharp. The park. The lights," he gasped. "That's 2. 3 more. Your dress. The stone. The moon. Good. 4 things you can feel. Cold," he whispered. My tie. The bench. Your hands. My hands, she repeated, rubbing his frozen fingers to warm them. Focus on my hands. I'm right here. Silas can't touch you. The board can't touch you. It's just us. Slowly, the rhythm of his breathing changed. The terrifying gasps smoothed out into deep, shaky breaths. He sat there for a long time, head down, holding onto her hands like a lifeline. When he finally looked up, his face was pale, stripped of all its arrogance. He looked young and scared. "This doesn't leave this balcony," he said, his voice hoarse. "Obviously," Elena said softly. She reached up and fixed his crooked tie. "Do you get these often?" "Only when the noise gets too loud," he murmured. He looked at her, really looked at her. "Why didn't you leave me? You could have gone back inside and told Silas. He would have paid you a fortune for the information that the Iron Man of Wall Street is cracking up." "I told you," Elena said, standing up and smoothing her dress. "I don't charge for mistakes, and I don't sell out my team." "Is that what we are? A team?" "For tonight, yes." She held out a hand to him, ready to go back in and scare the hell out of them. Julian stared at her hand. Then he took it. As he stood up, he didn't let go immediately. He pulled her slightly closer, the scent of his cologne, sandalwood and rain, filling her senses. "Thank you, Elena," he said. It was the first time he had said thank you since they met. 2 weeks passed. The dynamic at the office had shifted. Julian was still demanding, still exact, but the cruelty was gone. He trusted her. He started asking her opinion on things other than his schedule, marketing layouts, office decor, even lunch choices. But Elena hadn't forgotten who he was. She hadn't forgotten that he destroyed her father. It was 11:04 p.m. on a Tuesday. Julian was in Tokyo for a 48-hour meeting. Elena was alone in the penthouse office, tasked with digitizing the physical archives from 2018 to 2020. It was tedious work, scanning thousands of pages of contracts. She was tired. She grabbed a stack of files labeled Acquisitions, Q-OR 2019. She fed them into the scanner, watching the pages zip through. Then a name caught her eye on a yellow legal pad that was stapled to a contract. Russo Construction. Elena froze. She stopped the scanner, her heart hammered in her throat. This was the deal that ruined her family. She knew she shouldn't read it. It was confidential, but she couldn't stop herself. She pulled the file and sat on the floor, spreading the papers out. She expected to see a predatory buyout. She expected to see Julian Thorne squeezing her father for every penny, forcing him into bankruptcy. That's not what she found. She read the emails printed in the file. They were between Julian and a forensic accountant. From J. Thorne to P. Henderson, audit. Date, October 12, 2019. Subject, Russo liability report indicates Frank Russo is unaware of his partner's embezzlement. If we let the bank foreclose, Russo goes to prison for negligence alongside his partner. The partner stole $4 million from the pension fund. From P. Henderson to J. Thorne. Date, Oct. 12, 2019. Subject, Ray. Russo liability. Correct. But buying the debt is bad business, Julian. The company is dead. You'll lose $6 million instantly. Just let it burn. Russo is collateral damage. Elena's hands shook as she turned the page to see Julian's reply. From J. Thorne to P. Henderson. Date, October 13, 2019. Subject, Russo liability. I don't do collateral damage when it involves families. Buy the debt, fully. Replenish the pension fund from my personal reserves, not the company account. Then dissolve Russo Construction. Make it look like a hostile takeover. If Russo knows his partner stole from him, it will break him. Better he hates me for being a shark than hates his best friend for being a thief. Elena read it 3 times. Tears blurred her vision. Julian hadn't destroyed her father. Julian had spent $6 million of his own money to keep her father out of prison and to make sure his employees got their pensions. And he had done it silently, letting the world think he was the villain, just to spare her father the heartbreak of knowing his business partner betrayed him. "Oh my God," she whispered into the empty room. "You're working late." Elena jumped, scrambling to hide the papers. Julian was standing by the private elevator. He looked exhausted, his suit rumpled from the flight from Tokyo. He had come straight to the office. He saw the papers on the floor. He saw the tears on her face. He walked over, his expression unreadable. He looked down at the file, Russo Construction. The silence stretched for an eternity. "I can fire you for reading that," he said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" Elena stood up, the paper clutched in her hand. "My dad. He hates you. He curses your name every day. He thinks you stole his life. He has his freedom," Julian said, walking past her to his desk and pouring a scotch. "And he has his pride. He thinks he was beaten by a billionaire, not stabbed in the back by his best friend, Gary. Gary is in jail for tax evasion. Your father is at home." "You lost $6 million, Elena said, her voice trembling. "Why? You didn't even know him." Julian took a sip of the drink. He turned to look at the city lights. "My father was a good man, a soft man. He was destroyed by a partner who embezzled everything. He went to prison for a crime he didn't commit because he couldn't pay the debts. He hanged himself in his cell when I was 12. Elena gasped. She covered her mouth. "I made a promise," Julian said, his voice devoid of emotion, though his eyes were dark storms, "that if I ever had the power, I wouldn't let that happen to anyone else, even if it was bad business. You let everyone think you're a monster." Elena stepped closer to him. The desk was the only thing between them. "It's easier to be a monster, Elena. Monsters don't have to explain themselves. Monsters don't get hurt." Elena walked around the desk. She stood right in front of him. He looked down at her, wary, waiting for her to quit or scream or leave. Instead, she reached out and took the glass from his hand, setting it down. Then she wrapped her arms around his waist and buried her face in his chest. Julian froze. He stood rigid, arms at his sides. He wasn't used to being touched. Not like this. Not with kindness. "You're not a monster," she muffled into his shirt. "You're the best man I've ever met, and you're an idiot for not telling anyone." Slowly, hesitantly, Julian's arms came up. He wrapped them around her, holding her tight. He rested his chin on the top of her head. He let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 20 years. "I'm not a good man, Elena," he whispered into her hair. "Shut up," she said, squeezing him tighter. "I'm the logistics manager. I decide what's what. And I say, you're good." They stood there for a long time in the quiet office, the city burning bright below them. The barrier was gone. The secret was out. But peace never lasts long in Julian Thorne's world. Just as the moment settled, Julian's phone on the desk lit up. A priority notification. Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You should get that. It's the red line." Julian picked up the phone. He read the message. His face went from soft to stone in a heartbeat. The mask was back. "What is it?" Elena asked, fear spiking in her chest. "It's Silas Vance," Julian said, his voice deadly calm. "He found out about the money I used for your father's company. He's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. He's accusing me of embezzling company funds for personal vendettas." Julian looked at Eleanor. "He's going to use your father to destroy me." The boardroom on the 80th floor was known as the freezer. It wasn't just the temperature, which was kept at a brisk 68 degrees. It was the people. 12 men and women sat around a table made of reclaimed black oak, representing billions of dollars in assets. They were the board of directors for Thorne Vance Capital, and they smelled blood. Elena sat in the back row, in a chair designated for support staff. She had her notepad, but her hands were trembling so badly she couldn't hold a pen. Julian sat at the head of the table. He looked impeccable. He had shaved, his tie was a perfect Windsor knot, and his face was a mask of indifference. But Elena knew better. She saw the tightness in his jaw. She knew he hadn't slept. Silas Vance stood at the opposite end of the table. He was enjoying this. He clicked a remote, and a projection appeared on the smart glass wall. "Ladies and gentlemen," Silas began, his voice dripping with faux concern, "we are here to discuss a matter of grave importance regarding the ethical leadership of this company." The screen displayed a bank transfer. 6,200,000 Arsamgasatos. In October of 2019, Julian Thorne withdrew over $6 million. At the time, he claimed this was for a private equity liquidity pool. However, Silas clicked the remote again. A document appeared. Russo Construction, Debt Purchase Agreement. He used the funds to bail out a failing construction company in Queens, a company with zero assets, a company that was essentially dead weight. Silas paused for effect. Now, why would the brilliant shark of Wall Street throw $6 million into a furnace? The board members murmured. Papers were shuffled. Perhaps, Silas continued, his eyes darting to the back of the room where Elena sat, it is because the daughter of that company's owner is currently sitting in this room, hired by Mr. Thorne 2 weeks ago, promoted instantly to head of logistics with a 6-figure salary. Every head turned to look at Eleanor. She felt like she was shrinking. It was a lie. The timeline was wrong. But it looked damning. It looked like Julian was paying for a mistress's family debts. "This is embezzlement," Silas declared, "or at the very least, a gross misuse of power for personal romantic entanglements. It proves Julian Thorne is no longer making decisions based on profit. He is making them based on passion." "Enough," Julian said. He didn't shout. He just spoke, and the room fell silent. Julian stood up. "The money was mine," Julian said calm. "It came from my personal liquidity, not the company operational fund. I am allowed to spend my private capital however I see fit." "But you used company legal resources to draft the NDA," Silas shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You used our lawyers to hide your dirty laundry. That is a breach of fiduciary duty, Julian. Clause 14 of your contract." "I did it to save the pension fund of 45 workers," Julian said, his eyes scanning the faces of the board members, "because it was the right thing to do. We are not a charity, Julian," one of the board members, a woman named Mrs. Galloway, snapped. "We are an investment firm. If you are soft enough to save every sob story that crosses your desk, you are too soft to lead this company." "I move for a vote of no confidence," Silas said, smiling a shark's smile, effective immediately. "Seconded," Mrs. Galloway said. "Wait." Elena stood up. The chair clattered behind her. "You don't understand. He didn't know me. He saved my father's company years before he met me. He did it because Miss Russo," Julian's voice cracked like a whip. "Sit down." "No." Elena walked toward the table. "He did it because he has a conscience, something none of you seem to have. Silas Vance is shorting this company's stock. He wants Julian out so the price tanks and he makes a fortune." "Remove her," Silas ordered the security guards. "She is hysterical." "Elena, stop," Julian said. He looked at her, and his eyes were pleading. "Don't destroy yourself for me." 2 security guards stepped forward. "I am stepping down as chairman, pending an internal investigation," Julian announced loudly over Elena's protests. "Meeting adjourned." The room erupted into chaos. Julian turned his back on the board and walked straight to Elena. He grabbed her arm, not gently, and marched her out of the room, past the shouting directors, into the hallway, and into his private elevator. As the doors closed, cutting off the noise, the silence was deafening. Julian released her arm. He leaned his forehead against the cool metal of the elevator door. "You idiot," he whispered. "You brave, reckless idiot." "They were lying," Elena cried, tears streaming down her face. "Silas twisted everything. That is what men like Silas do. He won." Julian turned to face her. He looked defeated. "I'm suspended. They'll vote me out by Friday. It's over." "It's not over. We can fight." "There is no we anymore, Elena." Julian walked to his desk as the elevator opened into the penthouse. He pulled a checkbook from his jacket. He wrote a check and tore it out. "Here," he said, extending it to her. "This is 6 months' salary. Take it. Leave. Don't come back." Elena looked at the check. Then she looked at him. "You're firing me?" "I'm saving you," Julian said, his voice hard. "If you stay associated with me, Silas will blacklist you. You'll never work in this city again. Take the money. Go take care of your father." Elena took the check. She looked at the zeros. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she ripped it into tiny pieces and let them fall onto his expensive carpet. "I don't want your money," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "And I don't take orders from men who give up. You saved my dad when you didn't have to. Now I'm going to save you, whether you like it or not." She turned and walked to the elevator. "Elena," Julian called out. She didn't look back. The doors closed. Julian stood alone in his tower, surrounded by the wreckage of his empire, realizing that for the first time in his life, he didn't want to be alone. Elena walked out of Thorn Tower into the biting cold of the New York afternoon. She had no job, no plan, and she was going up against a man worth billions. She took the subway to Queens. She needed to think. She needed to go to the source. Her father, Frank Russo, was sitting in his wheelchair in the small living room, watching a game show. He looked old. The stroke he'd suffered after the business collapsed had taken his vitality, but his mind was still sharp. "Elena?" He looked up, surprised to see her in the middle of the day. "What are you doing here? Did you lose the fancy job?" Elena pulled up a kitchen chair and sat directly in front of him. "Dad, we need to talk. About the business. About the end." Frank's face darkened. "I don't want to talk about it. Gary stole the money. That's the end." "It wasn't just Gary," Elena said. "Dad, listen to me. Who was Gary meeting with before the collapse? Do you remember? You said he was acting strange. He was always on the phone," Frank grumbled, "meeting with some developer. Big shot. Said he had a golden parachute if things went south." "Did he ever say a name?" Frank squinted, thinking back to the worst days of his life. "Vance. Something Vance. I thought it was a supplier." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Silas Vance. "Dad," Elena took his hand, "the man I work for. Julian Thorne. He's the one who bought the debt. He's the one who paid the pensions." Frank pulled his hand away. "Thorne? The shark? No. He's the one who shut us down." "He shut it down to stop the bank from seizing the house," Elena explained, speaking urgent and fast. "He paid $6 million of his own money to cover Gary's theft, so you wouldn't go to jail for negligence. He saved us, Dad. He's been the good guy the whole time." Frank stared at her. He processed the information slowly. The years of anger, the hatred he had directed at the name Thorne, it all began to crumble. He paid the pensions?" Frank whispered. I thought the union insurance covered that. It was Julian. Frank looked out the window. Then I've been cursing the wrong man. He looked back at Elena, his eyes fierce. If this Vance guy is the one who corrupted Gary, if he's the reason I'm in this chair, you nail him, Elena. You nail him to the wall. I'm going to, Elena promised. But I need help. She left her father's house and pulled out her phone. She dialed a number she hadn't called in weeks. Hello? A nervous voice answered. Marcus, Elena said. It's Elena. I need a favor. A big one. 3 hours later, Elena was standing in the back alley of L'Obsidian, the restaurant where it all began. It was pouring rain again, poetic symmetry that Elena didn't have time to appreciate. Marcus opened the back door. He looked terrified. Elena, you can't be here, he hissed. If Jean-Luc sees you. Is Silas Vance here? Elena asked, cutting him off. Table 4, the private alcove. He's with 2 other guys. They're celebrating. Celebrating what? I don't know. They ordered the 1982 Petrus. They're loud. I need to hear what they're saying, Elena said. Elena, no, I can't. I finally got my station back. Marcus. Elena grabbed his shoulders. Julian apologized to you, right? He sent you the money? Yeah, Marcus admitted. 5 grand. It paid for my semester books. Silas Vance is trying to destroy him, and he's the one who got you fired in the first place. He's the one who complained about the service 3 weeks ago, remember? The smudge on the glass guy? Marcus's eyes widened. That was Vance. That was Vance. Julian just took the heat because he's the boss. Help me. Marcus swallowed hard. He looked back into the kitchen, then at Eleanor. Table 4 is near the service station. There's a flower arrangement on the divider. I can leave my phone in the flowers. Recording. Do it, Eleanor said. 10 minutes later, Eleanor was huddled under the awning of the alley, waiting. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. Got it. He's leaving, coming out back. Eleanor's heart stopped. Coming out back, the VIPs usually left through the front, unless they were doing something they didn't want the paparazzi to see. The heavy steel door of the restaurant swung open. Elena pressed herself into the shadows behind a dumpster. Silas Vance walked out, accompanied by a shorter, balding man. They were smoking cigars, sheltering under the overhang. It's done, Silas laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. The board votes Friday. Thorne is out. And the stock? The other man asked. I've already shorted it by 20%. When the news hits that he's fired for embezzlement, the stock drops like a stone. We buy it back for pennies on the dollar on Monday morning. I'll own the controlling interest by noon. What about the girl? The waitress? Silas took a drag of his cigar. Collateral damage. I planted a story with the Post. Tomorrow's headline is Billionaire's Bimbos, How Thorne Squandered Millions on Staff. She'll be so busy fighting off reporters she won't be able to testify. Elena clamped a hand over her mouth to stop herself from gasping. It was worse than she thought. It wasn't just a takeover, it was a setup. Insider trading, market manipulation, slander. You're a genius, Silas, the other man said. I know. Now let's get the car. I want to be home before the storm hits. They walked toward the street where a limo was idling. Elena waited until they were gone. Then she burst back into the kitchen. Marcus was there, holding his phone, pale as a sheet. Did you get it? Elena asked, breathless. I got the first 20 minutes, Marcus said, handing her the phone. They talked about everything, the short sale, the fake press release, and something about a Gary Russo from years ago, saying he was a cheap bribe. Elena grabbed the phone. She had the smoking gun. She didn't run to the police. Not yet. She ran to the one place she knew she could find Julian. She burst into the penthouse elevator, bypassing security with the pass card Julian hadn't deactivated yet. The office was dark. Julian was sitting on the floor by the window, a glass of scotch in his hand, looking out at the city that had rejected him. "I told you to leave," he said without turning around. "And I told you I don't take orders from quitters," Elara said, marching across the room. She slammed Marcus's phone onto the coffee table in front of him. "Play it." Julian looked at the phone, then up at her. He saw the rain in her hair, the fire in her eyes. He saw the fierce determination that had made him hire her in the first place. He picked up the phone and pressed play. Silas Vance's voice filled the quiet room. Shorted it by 20%. Embezzlement story is fake. Bought Gary Russo for a cheap bribe. Julian listened. His posture changed. The slump in his shoulders vanished. The predator was waking up. When the recording finished, Julian set the phone down gently. He stood up. The darkness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, brilliant clarity. "He admitted to insider trading," Julian said softly, "and corporate espionage." "We have him," Elara said. "We have him, Julian." Julian looked at her. He walked over and cupped her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed the rain from her cheeks. "You went into the mud for me," he whispered. "Someone had to," she whispered back. "Then let's finish it," Julian said. He turned to his desk and hit the intercom button. "Security? This is Thorne. Lock down the building, call the SEC, and get the board of directors on the line. Tell them to get back here, now." He turned back to Elara, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Get your notepad, Ms. Russo. We have a company to save." It was 3 Mars a.m. when the board of directors reassembled in the freezer. They were tired, disheveled, and furious at being summoned back to the tower in the middle of a storm. Silas Vance was the last to arrive. He strode in, still wearing his tuxedo from the celebration, smelling of cigars and arrogance. "This is pathetic, Julian," Silas sneered, throwing his coat onto a chair. "Calling us back in the middle of the night? Is this your resignation speech? You could have emailed it." Julian sat at the head of the table. He was perfectly still. Elara stood to his right, her hands clasped behind her back, her face composed. "Sit down, Silas," Julian said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. "I don't think I will," Silas retorted. "I think I'll call for a vote to have you removed from the premises by security." "You can try," Julian said, "but the security team currently answers to Ms. Russo." Silas laughed. "The waitress? This is a joke." "The joke," Elara spoke up, her voice clear and ringing through the silent room, "is that you thought you could talk about federal crimes in a restaurant full of staff you've abused for years." She placed Marcus's phone on the center of the black oak table. She connected it to the boardroom speakers via Bluetooth. "What is this?" Mrs. Galloway asked, adjusting her glasses. "The truth," Julian said. "Play it." Elara tapped the screen. Silas's voice boomed through the room, magnified by the surround sound system. Shorted it by 20%. Embezzlement story is fake. Bought Gary Russo for a cheap bribe. Collateral damage. Fraud. The color drained from Silas Vance's face. It wasn't a gradual fade. It was instant, like a light being switched off. He looked at the phone, then at the board members. Their expressions shifted from annoyance to horror. This is doctored," Silas stammered. "AI generation. Deepfakes." "It's a raw audio file," Elara said calmly. "Recorded 3 hours ago. We've already sent a copy to the SEC and the district attorney. They are very interested in your definition of collateral damage. Mrs. Galloway stood up. She looked at Silas with pure disgust. You shorted our own stock? You tried to tank the company? I did it for us, Silas screamed, losing his composure. Thorne is weak. He's spending millions on charity cases. I did it to make us stronger. You did it to make yourself rich, Julian said, standing up. And you used an innocent family to do it. The double doors opened. 2 uniformed NYPD officers stepped in, followed by the head of legal. Silas Vance, the officer said. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of securities fraud, insider trading, and corporate espionage. Silas looked for an exit, but there was none. He slumped, defeated. As they handcuffed him and led him past the table, he stopped in front of Eleanor. You're just a waitress, he spat. Eleanor looked him in the eye. And you're just a criminal. Enjoy prison, Mr. Vance. I hear the wine list is terrible. As the doors closed behind him, silence returned to the room. The board turned to Julian. They looked ashamed. Julian, Mrs. Galloway began. We didn't know. You didn't ask, Julian said coldly. Meeting adjourned. 2 days later, the storm had passed. The sun was shining on New York City. Thorne Vance Capital stock had rebounded, hitting an all-time high after the news broke that the corrupt element had been purged. But Julian wasn't checking the stock price. He was in Queens. He stood in the small living room of the Russo house. Frank Russo sat in his wheelchair, looking at the man he had hated for years. So, Frank grunted, you're the shark. I am, Julian said, standing awkwardly in the middle of the room. Elena told me everything, Frank said. His voice was gruff, but his eyes were wet. You saved my house, you saved my guys, and you let me hate you for it. It was necessary, Julian said. It was stupid, Frank corrected. He reached out a shaking hand, but it was decent. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Julian took the old man's hand. Call me Julian. Later, outside on the porch, Elena and Julian watched the neighborhood kids playing street hockey. So, Elena said, leaning against the railing, the board wants you back as chairman. Full control. I told them I'd take it, Julian said. On one condition. What's that? That I get a new partner. Someone to handle the people. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being an idiot. Elena smiled. Sounds like a tough job. Who's the lucky candidate? You, obviously. Julian turned to her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. Elena's breath hitched. Julian. He opened it. It wasn't a ring. It was a business card. Elena Russo, partner, and Chief Operating Officer Thorne Capital. Elena laughed, taking the card. Co-o. I don't have a degree. You have something better, Julian said, stepping closer. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her flush against him. You have heart, and you saved me. I guess I did, she whispered. Julian leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a corporate kiss. It was passionate, real, and full of a promise that this was just the beginning. Now, Julian whispered against her lips. About that raise. Double, Elena said. Done. And that is how a rainy Tuesday and a single drop of wine changed the course of history on Wall Street. Elena proved that true power isn't about the money in your bank account, but the strength of your character. Julian Thorne learned that even the strongest armor needs a heart behind it. In a world of sharks, Elena dared to be human, and in doing so, she didn't just save a company, she saved a soul. It's a reminder to all of us. Never underestimate the person serving your coffee. They might just be the one running the world tomorrow. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the good guys can still win. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.